but I'll just start by welcoming everyone. Hello, thanks for coming again, and please pop in the chat hello and where you are calling in from. It's always fun to see where everybody is. And Allison.
Hi, so welcome to the second session of Ruskin's Night Matters. Before we start, I just want to extend that formal apology where you can actually see my face for the technical difficulties that we had the first time. We have fixed those. So hopefully everything will be much smoother sailing, especially with some of the browser issues that followed. So I appreciate everybody's patience, and I want to just say thank you for all of that. For myself, I'm a fairly new staff member. I started with the International Dark Sky Association in September, and my job title is the Development Operations Manager. So I'm here to make sure that all of our donors know what we're doing, when we're doing, and feel very appreciated. And that's kind of, to me, one of the best jobs that you could possibly have, is letting people know how much you appreciate them. So we wanted to extend a lot of the benefits that we can to our members and our advocates. And so this is one of the ways that we've added a benefit for the organization. So we want to make sure that you guys and all of our members and our advocates can connect to the dark sky, in a variety of unique ways. So we have a lot of different topics coming over the next year. The February topic will be on light justice, and in March will be women in night skies. So we really hope that you guys will join us for that one as well. And I will turn it back over to Betty Maya.
All right, thank you, Allison. I'll introduce myself as well for those of you who I don't know. I know most of you, but it's really nice to see some new faces. My name is Betty Maya Foote. I'm the Director of Engagement for IDA, and talk about dream job. Allison gets to thank and appreciate all of our members and donors. I get to thank and appreciate all of the people around the world who are trying to make dark sky changes in their own communities. And it is such an incredible network of people around the world. It's really easy to feel kind of alone in the fight against light pollution sometimes in your own community. But when I joined the IDA, I every day find inspiration and hope from our network and people doing amazing things around the world. So definitely my dream job. Been here for about 4 years. Don't really think I'm going to go anywhere for a while. So really glad to be here. And now I have the distinct honor and pleasure of introducing someone that all of you know, probably, a man that doesn't need much of an introduction. But Ruskin Hartley is our great boss and is the CEO and Executive Director of the International Dark Sky Association. In this role, he champions equitable access to dark skies and quality lighting for all through IDA's award-winning programs. Ruskin works closely with volunteer leaders and donors to secure increased support for our priorities around the world. Ruskin believes that experiencing a dark sky and appreciating quality lighting are essential to IDA's mission. Originally from the UK and also a Liverpool fan, so you know he's a good guy, Ruskin holds a bachelor degree from the University of Cambridge and a master's degree from the University of East Anglia. Ruskin loves to head out on the trail with his wife and kids or cook under the stars. So welcome, Ruskin. Thank you for all that you do, and I will turn it over to you.
Well, thanks so much, Betty Maya. I have to say I'm slightly in awe of this group, seeing some of the names pop up on the screen, because there's people here who know an awful lot more about light pollution and dark skies and astronomy and human health and all those things than I do. So I'm honored to be here, and I'm excited to be here, and I'm really happy to sort of kick off our new year with our new commitment to really engage as deeply as we can with all our supporters and donors and advocates around the world. It's all of you that's really driving this work forward, and it's you that we're working to serve. We did want to start with a couple questions, I think, just in the poll to get a sense of kind of who's in the virtual room as it are. It's great to see people pop in the chat. So Alison or Betty Mike, can you bring up the first quick poll just to sort of get a sense of who's here?
Yep.
So why do you care about this? You're an astronomer, do you care about biodiversity, protecting the environment, something else perhaps? Just let us know. We'll have that's, one of the wonderful things about this work is there's so many points of intersection with so many things that people care about around the world. Would be interesting to have been tracking this over the last 30 years as the organization has grown and matured as well, right? So
Yeah.
So we'll just look at that for a few more minutes, then we'll, a few more seconds, get up to 80%.
We're at 84 now. Let's give people
84.
5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and poll, share results.
Share the results there. So it's great to see the sort of so many points of connection that people have to this work. And I really think that is really one of the strengths of this movement, that we're able to blend all those different perspectives as we move forward together. And then maybe just quickly bring up the second question, Betty Meyer, get a sense. So how long have you been aware of light pollution? How long have you thought about it as an issue that you care about, that you've been focused on, that you've dedicated some of your time, volunteer time, some of your financial resources, some of your philanthropy towards? See, we got a great look at this. 43% of you out there being involved in this for more than a decade. It's pretty remarkable.
All right, well, 100% participation. Nice job.
You guys
everybody.
rock.
I'm going to end the poll, share the results.
Share the results, yeah. So again, I should just quit right now and hand over the microphone to someone else to talk about this, but I won't. I am going to share my screen now. Hopefully everyone can see that. If you can't, let me know, Betty Meyer.
Yeah, it looks good.
I just mentioned that. I mean, I'm right in the heart of that. I mean, 4 years ago, a little bit over 4 years ago, I joined the International Dark Sky Association. And as Betty Meyer said, I've been working in conservation for many years here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Worked on forest conservation, worked on water quality issues, worked a little bit on some global poverty issues. And I have to say, I had heard of the term light pollution. In fact, I remember being in a meeting of the science committee for the Save the Redwoods League, and someone asked a question, well, what about, how do the headlights of cars affect those trees? Now, what about that? Those lights coming in those dark places? And it was, oh, that's an interesting question. But then we kind of moved on. And so as I'd been involved in conservation for 20 years and hadn't really thought about light pollution as an issue I should care about until I saw a job posting from the International Dark Sky Association about 4.5 years ago. And I wanted to share just a few of the highlights of things that kind of have jumped out at me over the last 4 years as I've kind of started to immerse myself in this issue and learn from so many people in the community, many of the people on the call today, in fact. So first, we all know light pollution impacts wildlife, right? If you know anything about this, you probably know that you've seen the classic images of the turtles on the beaches, for instance, or we've all seen that moths are drawn to flames. What is becoming increasingly clear is essentially every single species that has been studied in terms of its impact of light pollution on these species they found an impact. They found a change in the behavior. I wanted to share just 2 quick examples here from some recent work from Travis Loncourt that I think is really groundbreaking, which was the first time looking at establishing ecological thresholds for those impacts. On the left, you have a California species, the grunion, that spawns, I believe, in the new moon. I might got that wrong, it might be the full moon, but it's linked to the lunar cycle. On the right is the snowy plover, both endangered species there on the beaches in California. And Travis was able to identify that they are impacted by light pollutions at a fraction of a full moon. We're talking about sort of 0.1, 0.2 lux, changing the behavior of these species. So the takeaway for me is pretty much everything, all wildlife is impacted by light pollution and at very low levels. But it extends beyond the classic, I think a lot of us think about wildlife, the impact on plants. There was a study about last year that came out that looked at the impact that light pollution was having on plants growing in urban areas, and particularly in urban areas under high levels of light pollution. Many of us working in conservation for a long period of time are familiar with the sort of heat island effect that's been exacerbated by climate change, where plants in cities tend to break bud earlier, and they tend to set their leaves, they lose their leaves later. And essentially their clock is being messed up and scrambled by heat. Well, for the first time, people were able to tease out what is the impact of light versus the impact of heat. And what they found was the impact of high levels of light pollution was equivalent to the impact of high levels of heat. So light pollution is having the same impact, equivalent magnitude of impact as climate change and the heat island effect on plants. And you might have seen the photos of crop fields in the Midwest, soy fields, where the light from the street light is basically, the plants don't know what time of year it is, and they're not senescing, they're not going to sleep in the winter. So light pollution is impacting plants. It's not just wildlife, it's plants as well. We're learning more and more about. Clearly, we know Mario's on the call, did some groundbreaking work with AMA and with IJ in terms of the impact of light pollution on people. This is a photo that Megan Eves, the editor of Nightscape, sent to me from a street in London. And I certainly wouldn't want to be those kids or the parent of the kids in those rooms trying to sleep under those high levels of light trespass. And we know from large-scale epidemiological studies that people who live under high levels of light pollution are more likely to have poor outcomes in terms of diabetes, certain forms of cancer, obesity, mental health. The list goes on and on. And we know from the lab studies, we know the biological processes that are driving that in terms of the disruption of our basic fundamental rhythms. Those of you who joined us at the Under One Sky conference would have heard Lisa Husham talk about this. And it's both, I think was really interesting, it's both high levels of light at night. It's also living indoors during the day with very dim light. And we're getting it on both ends. We're denying ourselves bright light during the day, and we're exposing ourselves to too much light at night. And the impact on our health is demonstrable and very clear. I wanted to share this before moving on to the fourth impact. And this is a great diagram that comes out of the Leipzig group in Europe that looks at the levels of light from a bright sunny day here in southern Arizona, 120,000 lux, to a dark night, just under starlight. You see a fraction of a lux there, and you can see full moon there at 0.3 lux, very low light levels, although anyone who's been out under a full moon know you can navigate around perfectly well. But look at how various species and the melatonin suppression as an indicator of the impact on biological health is impacted. And so many species are impacted at levels that are equivalent to like a full moon, which kind of makes sense, and so we're in tune to the full moon. But as you can see, those are levels that are so commonly found in cities under sky glow and under outdoor lighting. So the message is, light at night, irrespective of the levels, is going to have an impact on so many different types of species. Now, I wanted to link that through to some other recent work around parks and protected areas. So we're learning there's a big movement at the moment to sort of protect 30% of the land surface area, set it aside for nature, which is fabulous. I've been part of that for many years, working to protect parks and reserves. What we're learning from recent studies is somewhat upwards of 50% of the protected areas, both on land and interestingly also marine protected areas in the ocean, actually have elevated levels of sky brightness at night. In other words, they're impacted by light pollution. So the question is, are they truly protected if we're still allowing the light from our cities at a great distance to seep in? And we know even at low light levels, they're going to disrupt the ecology and biology of those systems. And fifth is the relationship to climate change. I did some estimates last year with one of our board members, Alejandro Sanchez, and we translated some work that he had done that looked at the footprint of light at night seen from the satellite systems, and we translated that into energy, wasted energy. And what we found, I should have looked at the greenhouse gas equivalent, but we are wasting, just in money, at least $50 billion a year we're spending in energy to light up the underside of the satellite that's flying over. That $50 billion of wastage is a tremendous amount of energy. It's a tremendous amount of money. It's a tremendous amount of waste. And it's really just demonstrating how far we have to go in terms of using light more responsibly at night. So it's clear that light pollution, as we all know, is a global issue. No surprise probably to anyone here that the vast majority of people on the planet live under light polluted skies. Here in Europe and North America, 99%, only 1% of people live under anything that approaches a pristine sky. And the vast majority of people actually live in places where they never see the Milky Way, and a significant portion actually live in cities where they never become dark adapted. We also know it's growing globally, it's growing rapidly. Some work from Alejandro Sanchez a couple of years ago. Over the last 25 years, it's grown at least 49% across the globe, 400% in some regions. Last week, some of you might have seen a really groundbreaking paper in Science that came out of the Globe at Night data that some of you have been involved in. Basically 50,000 measurements, visual observations of the number of stars have been taken by volunteer scientists all around the world over the last 12 years. And they, Connie and Chris and others analyzed that. And what they found, and the headline is, the estimate is that the night sky has been brightening at 9.6% per year globally. So to put it in perspective, a 10% per year change means that the level of light pollution is doubling about every 7 years. Chris Kyber put it nicely. If you're an 18-year-old, if you were born 18 years ago, you would have grown up. You would have been born under a sky that you could see maybe 250 stars. 18 years later, that has dropped to 100 stars. So tremendous, tremendous growth. We had thought we knew 2% was a conservative estimate, but 10%, I think even the scientists who looked at this said, wow, this really needs to be a wake-up call to take this, to take concerted action to turn this around. So I wanted to split my rest of the remarks into two, but I wanted to look back a little bit on what we've been doing over the last year with your support, and many of you have been involved very directly in this. Then I wanted to look ahead and kind of preview a new strategic plan and some other changes that are coming to the organization. So looking back, many people become aware of dark skies because of the incredible International Dark Sky Places program that's really known around the world as the gold standard in night sky conservation. Really exciting thing. We now have more than 200 certified places around the world. We, in fact, certified a new one in New Zealand just last week. I can see Kyra there. That was a great win for New Zealand. Fabulous to see that. And excitingly, we have at least 200 in the process in 22 countries and growing. All of these, they share some common elements. We have different names for them: parks, sanctuaries, reserves, but they share common elements. It's all about monitoring the quality of the nighttime environment at night, adopting quality lighting policies, implementing dark sky friendly lighting, and critically demonstrating community engagement and support so it has longevity. And what we see is these designations are really opportunity to bring people together around something that they all care about. It brings people together across the political divide. People who do not see eye to eye on various issues can come together and say, yeah, we value this. We want to protect it. Just a few examples of our successes from last year. And I say these are not our successes. These are your successes. We verify them, we validate them, we provide an awful lot of support, but ultimately it's volunteers around the world doing all the work on the ground. Greater Big Bend was really exciting. This is down in West Texas. It's a very remote part of the United States, some of the darkest skies. It's also one of the first binational reserves there. It really came out of efforts in the McDonald Observatory. It has now expanded to state parks, national parks, the Nature Conservancy Conservation Land, and down into northern Mexico. And it's really just a great example of what it takes to bring people together across the divide, literally across the US-Mexico divide, which is only in the news these days because of bad things happening. I think there's a really wonderful example of binational cooperation. Our International Dark Sky Community Program, there are a number of communities that have been certified in Colorado and Arizona and Utah and places in the West. So it's really exciting to start to see that concept starting to take hold elsewhere. This is The community of Jelsa on the coast in Croatia has really embraced night sky protection, and the stars overhead is something that is special and unique that they want to protect, and they believe people would be drawn to their community because of that. And our 200th Dark Sky Place wasn't a marquee national park or a binational reserve. It was the Merritt Reservoir State Recreation Area in Nebraska. And I don't know about you, but that looks like a pretty incredible photo of the night sky there overhead. So we're seeing cities and communities and park districts around the world really getting excited and coming together around this. We're also being really excited about just growing the global dark sky movement. You know, the growing awareness here. We now have 1,400 advocates in 51 countries. We have supporters around the world, 67 countries. And our Under One Sky conference last year, we had 650 plus people come together with discussions over 24 hours, which is just, anyone who participates, just so inspiring to hear these stories of people affecting change in their community around the world and sharing stories and ideas and getting inspiration from each other. During Dark Sky Week last year, we reached over 1 million people. And that's really our opportunity to spread the word as widely as possible. And really, these are some of the faces. These are some of the award winners from last year. Danny in Wales doing wonderful work with Dark Sky Places, Ryan Khan in Pakistan, looking how to integrate art and other things into this work. Marcela de Souza down in Brazil is organizing a great festival down there in the next few months. Travis Longcore probably needs no introduction. He literally wrote the book on artificial light at night. He's continued to be a fierce advocate for ecological protections, inclusion of light pollution ecology. Sam Yukta, Kenya and Slovenia, actually just joined our board. Really exciting to get her perspective as a dark sky ambassador and an astrotourism practitioner. And Kelly, anyone who knows Kelly, she's down she was on our board for 6 years, and she is just such a wonderful, fierce, no hold bars advocate. She epitomizes the best of the West Australians, you know, and she's just done such incredible work in terms of elevating awareness of light pollution, and also how you can work with industry and others to affect effective change. So we're really honored to be able to recognize the work of so many people doing this around the world. We've also starting to step up in terms of our advocacy for the night, so really speaking up for dark skies. And I wanted to share just 2 examples. I mentioned the US-Mexico border, and again, this is a US-based issue, but it's binational. And I think news around the world has come in what's happening at the border down here in the US in terms of the border wall and immigration policies. We learned last year, in fact, that they had put up lights along large stretches of the border wall. These lights are in some of the most remote stretches, some of the darkest places. And these are not street lights. These are stadium quality lights that they are proposing to turn on. Fortunately, they have not been turned on yet. And our board did adopt a position opposition to those. And we've been working with Border Patrol and others to encourage them to go through a thoughtful process to only apply them where it's actually needed. If we've talked to some former law enforcement officers who have connections to the Border Patrol, and they're saying, the Border Patrol agents, they don't want these things. There's a political stunt. So stepping up and saying, hey, there are places that we just should keep naturally dark. And you know, the other aspect that we've been dealing with in the last 3 years is what's happening overhead as we move from a period where we have maybe 5,000 satellites overhead, and it's certainly grown as a kid. It was always wonderful to see a satellite go overhead because it was so unusual. But we're looking at a scenario by the end of the decade, by 2030, that there may be 100,000 satellites overhead, many of which will be visible. Many of these are being licensed in the US, at least initially. And at the end of the year, we appealed the decision by the Federal Communications Commission to license the second phase of SpaceX satellites. We feel the level of environmental review was woefully inadequate. That appeal is underway, and we expect that to be heard in the DC court later this year. So we'll keep people posted on that. I also want to then start to look ahead and share some of the other work we've been doing in the last year. And that's some work that's really been led by our board of directors, and our board of directors is an incredible group. It really is an international body. We have More than half our board members are from outside the US, from previously Australia, now New Zealand, Chile, Mexico, Slovenia, Kenya, US, Germany. Really, the board has been really intentional about diversifying that so we can bring those different perspectives in. So some of the changes that we're making that we'll see rolling out. So we're being really clear now that light at night is pollution. There's been a long history of the International Dark Sky Association saying, well, that the pollution is the light that's not useful. And the analogy that has been used, and Fabio Falci and others have shared with me, is like, the ambulance that's taking, if you have a loved one who needs to be taken to hospital in an ambulance, it's burning gas, it's making a lot of noise, its sirens are blaring, so it is creating pollution, but it is useful. You want your loved one to get there safely, you want to get there quickly, and it's creating pollution. And so both can be true, is what we're saying. And we want to just acknowledge that light at night is a pollutant like any other classical pollutant. Now, our goal is not to eliminate all the pollutant, because that would mean eliminating all the light at night. And this is a quote from one of our board members, Kevin Gaston, from a paper a number of years ago. And the challenge for all of us is how to maximize the benefits of outdoor light at night while simultaneously limiting its costs in environmental and financial terms. And this requires us to be really thoughtful about when and where and how we're going to use light at night. And that really was codified in some work we did a number of years ago with the Illuminating Engineering Society, and has now been adopted by many others, with the 5 principles for responsible outdoor light at night, which says start with natural darkness, add light where it is needed, really think, is it useful? Is it really serving a purpose that requires us to put light out there? Is it targeted down on the ground where it's needed? Are we thinking about using lower intensity? We all know that as the intensity goes up, our pupil shutdown actually makes us able to see in many instances less well. It's going to can blind us. Are we using controllers? Are we using controllers so that it's on when we need it, it's off when it's not, or it's dimmed down when there's fewer people around? And are we really thinking about what's the color of light, and particularly wherever we can, using those warmer, richer colors at night that we know certainly have a reduced impact on sky glow and are more protective of many species, but not all species. So really it's thinking about what's the purpose and how you're going to apply it, as opposed to what happens now is, I need a light, I'll go and buy a light, I'll put it on and turn it off and then turn it on and forget about it, which is the default so often. We've identified 3 kind of top level strategies here so to pursue. So one is really the critical role that policy and effective policy is going to play. Yes, there will always be good actors who want to do the right thing, but there's going to be too few of them until our elected officials and our leaders put the policy environment in place to say, yes, we have to take this seriously. So we really want to support all of you to activate advocates to lead movement building dark sky policies that can get people on board so we can accelerate our progress here. Last year, we've had a couple examples that we were working on. We've been working with a group in Europe on the Brno appeal to reduce light pollution in Europe. I attended the meeting in the Czech Republic towards the end of last year. And critically, that appeal and the policy statement that we came out with, it starts with, yes, light at night is a pollutant, and encourages people across Europe to say, hey, you already have a lot of laws in place that require protection of the environment. You should use those to reduce the impact of light at night on things that you care about, like natural protected areas and health of people in communities. We also last year worked with many of you to pass proclamations, kind of recognitions from elected officials about, in this instance, International Dark Sky Week, but these are really proclamations around the impact that light at night is having and the value of dark skies and natural darkness. Last year we had about 23. This year we're on track to have 50 or 60. We'll talk a little bit more about how people can support this, but really using this as an opportunity to raise awareness, talk to elected officials about why, as a first step towards the ultimate goal, which is effective public policy. The second is really on dark sky practices, really promoting dark sky approved best practice through expansion of our certification programs. We have been really successful over the last 10, 12 years of developing a long list of dark sky approved fixtures. As many people know, you can take a good fixture and you can misapply it and you can have a bad outcome. And conversely, you could probably take a bad fixture and if you apply it well, you can have a good outcome. So we really want to move towards developing application guidance, and application guidance that you can then take to your elected officials and others, say, we want you to certify and specify this. The first example we have are these sports fields. Here's a sports field down in Florida, where really we worked with our technical committee and others to say, how can we, sports field lighting can be egregiously terrible. I mean, when the local high school sports field goes on around here, I can see it from 12 miles away, glowing because of the way it's spewing light all over the place. And if you live next to it, it's horrendous in terms of the glare and the trespass. Well, if you use good fixtures and you control them, and you dim them down, you put the light on the field and you turn it off at 11 or earlier when it's finished, your kids can be out there playing safely, or the professional league can be playing, and you can minimize the impact on the community in the night sky. And really that's the approach here, is if you're going to do it, let's do it well. So we want to build on that, develop other guidelines there. And the last is really about partnership, is really integrating dark sky principles and practices and approaches into global conservation themes. We've had a couple of starts in this. So one is taking our 5 principles, and we developed the Responsible Outdoor Light at Night manifesto for lighting professionals. So getting more of the individuals involved in the lighting industry on board with really understanding their responsibility to apply light well, which has been exciting. We also worked with our friends in the UK at Bug Life International to support proposals that were being put forward by the European Union to include light pollution in the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, the COP15 meeting in, I think it was Montreal in the fall. Now, unfortunately, the final communique, it did not specifically address light pollution, but light pollution was in there all the way to the penultimate draft. So while ultimately we were not successful at the last hurdle, that means I think it was 197 countries and their delegations have now at least had discussions about light pollution. So we're starting to raise awareness in these new venues and these new avenues. And really, this is, I believe now everyone deserves quality lighting and critically access to darkness. And we have too little of both at the moment. There's too little darkness and there's too little quality lighting. There's too much bad light out there. So what's up next? What's coming this year? So a couple things. One, we're all used to this. This is our current identity, the International Dark Sky Association, IDA. The board has made the decision we're going to refocus our identity. We're launching a new website around the brand Dark Sky. We believe this kind of focuses down on the core of what we're about, and will be part of a whole system that will expand out to our chapters and everyone else. And this will be launched with our new strategic plan and a much better website later in February or in early March. One of the top comments we get is, you guys have a lot of information on your website, but I can't find it. We want to make it more accessible. We want to make it more accessible and more useful for all of you, so you can point people to it. And again, crystallize our identity around something that's really meaningful. People call us the International Dark Sky Association, IDA, IDA, IDSA, ISA. So there's a lot of inconsistency. And when you get right down to it, IDA doesn't really mean anything. If you Google IDA, you might get the International Defense Association as opposed to the International Dark Sky Association. So that's one change. And you can see how it will be rolled out, some examples of our new website. And again, this is where we're going to put the new approach and strategy in our strategic plan front and center. We've also secured some funding to launch some pilot projects. One is in New Mexico. And really, this is about integrating dark sky principles and approaches into the conservation themes across the state, and we're fortunate that we can rely on volunteers to do a lot of this work. Now, the reality is volunteers also have day jobs. And what we're trying here is, if we take the volunteers in the state and we add, if we can get funding, if we add some professional support, can we make progress more quickly? So you can see the goals there, really establishing a chapter, collaboration, conservation assessment, really, but the ultimate goal is, with a sustained effort, can we update the 1999 New Mexico Night Sky Protection Act? Can we enact ordinances in some of the larger cities there? And ultimately, of course, can we increase dark sky protections? And we're going to learn by doing this, and we hope that we can take that pilot out and identify maybe other sources of funding in other locations, to again accelerate progress, so we can make more progress more quickly, both here in the US and critically around the world. We're also going to be launching our Dark Sky Responsible Outdoor Light at Night Learning program. And really, this is in response to a number of our chapter leaders and others. I'm thinking of, I don't know if Don's on the line, but Don Ficken in Missouri would always tell me, like, Ruskin, you do a great job of telling me that light pollution is a problem, which I get. And then he says, then you tell me that the solutions are simple, and I get all excited. And then Don will say, so what are the solutions, Ruskin? I say, well, it's kind of complicated. Look at our 5 principles, but what about streetlights? What about parking lots? What about this? How do I do it? Like, yeah. So really, the goal is to develop an education program focused on advocates, on the public, on the professionals involved in lighting decisions, on planners, lighting resellers, and really educate people about what's the fundamentals of lighting. What's the difference between a lux and a lumen and a candela? Why does spectrum matter? All those pieces. What's the fundamentals of light at night? In fact, most lighting designers, if you're a lighting designer, you spend 90% of your time learning about indoor light. You don't learn about outdoor light at lower light levels. Clearly, we want to do modules on light pollution impact on human health, ecology, et cetera, and then introduce a framework for community-friendly lighting, and then come up with application modules. You know, if your town wants to do sports lighting well, this is some ordinance language you can adopt. These are some application guidelines you can use, and yes, we hope we can build a certification program. The goal is this will be available online. We're going to offer as much as we can for free, but if you're a professional, you want to get continued professional development, you want to get certification around it, then we'll build it with a revenue model built in so that we can sustain it over time. And we really believe that we have the opportunity to become the go-to place for tools, guides, and resources for how to do lighting well at night, because no one else is doing it at the moment. So that's really exciting. So we're piloting it this year. We'll roll out some of it later this year, and then we'll build on that over the next 2 or 3 years. And we really look forward to engaging with all of you and chapters and delegates and others to figure out how we can make this as effective as possible. And this has been funded by a private donor and others who really believe that the future of turning back the clock on light pollution, as some people have said, goes through sort of education, really educating the professionals, educating the advocates. And ultimately, the goal is, if you're a dark sky advocate and you go and walk into your city council, we want you to be speaking the same language as the lighting professionals. Right, so often what we see is well-meaning advocates working on ordinances, and the lighting professional looks at the ordinances. I don't know what this means. This, you can't measure this, or that's the wrong term, or so like, how do we tighten that up so that we can have policies and procedures that everyone understands? So I'm excited for the next few years. It'll be my 4th year. I've been 4 years in a couple of weeks. I think I've learned a tremendous amount because of the generosity of everyone here in the community. I think the organization has done a tremendous job of focusing on dark sky places and why the night sky matters. And I think the next phase is really about how do we bring that in to the cities and communities where people live, that ultimately is the source of the problem. So thank you. I'm happy to pause there and turn it back to Betty Meyer for a Q&A.
Well, thank you, Ruskin, for your lovely presentation. And it was nice to actually be able to watch it this time instead of freaking out in the background about our technical difficulties. So very well spoken. And thank you for all that you're doing for IDA. There were some questions in the beginning about people are really interested in getting the slides. So I want to let everyone know we will send out a PDF of the slides as well as a recording of this session and the first session. If you can just pick whatever one you want to watch, they're both pretty much the same, but we'll send those out shortly after this. So the first question that I saw in the chat was from Mario, who is asking if you know what is happening with the Bluebird satellites. Stephen Hummel chimed in and said that they are in the early stages of working with Noir Lab to reduce the impact, and that Stephen will also be meeting with them soon to discuss the issue. But do you have any more information about those particular satellites?
I'd say I don't have information specifically about that. I mean, what I can share is more generally is Noir Lab is National Optical and Infrared Laboratory based here in Tucson, Arizona, and it is leading an IAU center that is going to be collaborating with industry to try and mitigate and reduce the impact of these satellites as they're launched. Right, the FCC license when FCC licensed the second SpaceX set of launches, they required a coordination agreement between the National Science Foundation, SpaceX, and the FCC. The coordination agreement, as I understand it, covers three main areas. One is radio interference, and SpaceX said they'll minimize that because they have to do that per the licensing requirements. The second is actually, these big expensive telescopes, they get aligned using lasers, that there's a concern that they might shoot down or damage satellites. Well, they've determined that they won't, so they don't have to coordinate around that. And they've said on the last side, now I have to be a little careful here because clearly it is a win that there is a coordination agreement. The third, though, covers the other requirements on the Dark and Quiet Skies report, and it basically says we'll do our best to try and mitigate and minimize the impact on the night sky. We'll do our best, but don't hold us to it. There's no teeth in it. There's no requirement. It's just we'll do our best. And that's set against the backdrop of the second generation of Starlinks. The good news is they're going to try some new reflective materials on it and will reduce the reflectivity. The bad news is they're twice the size, right? So the mass up there is going to be more. So yes, they're trying, but at the same time, they're putting more up. And I don't think we can rely on a coordination agreement between between those two government agencies to protect the night sky. It's just in the US, it's just one actor. I think what we need to do, we clearly need new global governance on this. We need a new approach to how we're using space. And we also need to make sure that our existing laws here in the US that require environmental review of major government decisions are applied equally to these decisions that are impacting space as well. So,
thanks, Ruskin. You're very well versed in the satellite issue. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. The next questions, I'm going to kind of loop all of them together because there's a couple questions about the branding.
Yeah.
The first one comes from Lucas Schuler. Hi, Lucas. Thanks for being here. He said, I have written a book that will appear in May in German. Concerned about the rebranding of IDA to Dark Sky International. Any news on the schedule? Is it worth to change from Dark Sky Switzerland with a hyphen to Dark Sky with no hyphen Switzerland in print, or will we be months or years ahead? And then kind of just with that question, maybe you can address this as well. Some people are saying that our brand has existed for a long time. Is it not more valuable to stick to what we have than to change it for easier recognition? And there's also another brand question that, let's see, I thought I copied it in here, but basically, oh yeah, the first poll shows that this is about more than Dark Sky. You know, because I know we've kind of considered dark night or starry night. Maybe you can talk to kind of all of those pieces.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's too long of a question.
So first, I mean, these are not undertaken. I mean, anytime an organization sort of rebrands and even tweaks its name like this, it's never undertaken lightly. So I would say that this was informed by a lot of data, a lot of survey work, surveys taken on our website, surveys that were sent out to all of our members. And ultimately, the decision from the board is now is the moment to change. We are still relatively, here to tell you guys, we are still relatively small. We are still a small niche product. But I think that's growing. I think the feeling was to tighten this up and refocus this. The change will be imminent. The change will be in the next 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something like that. We are going to host a couple meetings with chapter leaders and delegates to go into it in more detail, to talk through some of the logistics of this. So that will be coming in February. I would say, Lucas, certainly by May, the new brand will be rolled out. We also recognize that this will take time. This will take time. We're not like going to recall everything and require everyone to reposition immediately. So this is something that will be rolled out over the next few years. And we think, certainly the assessment of the board is this will help strengthen us and help grow us and help us focus on something that is becoming more, people becoming more aware of, which is dark skies in general. Yeah.
Thanks, Ruskin. And I mean, maybe do you want to just touch on retaining the brand of dark sky versus starry sky or dark night?
Yeah, we looked at that, and I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, I wasn't. I mean, there have been times in the past where the organization has almost voted to throw out the dark sky piece because people are afraid of the dark, and therefore we should lean into starry skies. I think in the end of the day, there was a recognition of a couple of things. It's like, but there is brand equity in International Dark Sky Association. When you get right down to it, the equity is focused on dark sky. Our URL is darksky.org. Our URL is not IDA, it is not International Dark Sky Association. And there was also a practical element of this. Our existing logo and our existing name, so Lucas, International Dark Sky Association Switzerland chapter, does not work. It is too long and too unwieldy. And so I think there are practical reasons in terms of how this is used, either on a billboard or in a web browser. And there's also the desire to simplicity and to move away from using an acronym and to really focus on dark sky as a concept that people are starting to come to understand. We are also not going to be dogmatic. Like if I think Michelle Wooten, I can see Michelle, Starry Sky South is our wonderful chapter down there. We're not going to require Starry Sky South to suddenly become Dark Sky, Starry Sky South, right, as the chapter. So if you know your community better than we know your community. So if you want to be Starry Sky South, a chapter of Dark Sky International, great, go for it. If you want to be Dark Sky Switzerland, fabulous, go for it.
Thanks, Ruskin. There's a lot of branding questions. I'll just ask one more and then we can move on. Someone's just inquiring about when the new certification / logo requirements will be communicated to the lighting vendors and manufacturers.
That will be rolled out over the next few weeks to few months as well. Yeah.
Okay.
And in terms of the light, we have 2 or 3 versions of our fixture seal of approval logo out there. And when you get right down to it, fixture seal of approval, again, doesn't mean anything to most people. What's a fixture? As opposed to a dark sky approved light, right? So that they were trying to move to streamline a little simpler here.
So there are a lot of questions. I don't know that we're going to get to all of them. I'm trying to take them in order here. I'm not sure I quite understand this question, but maybe you will, Ruskin. Do you know an example of where national legislation recognized IDA-approved dark sky parks? In Hungary, we are working in it with government officials.
I'm not aware of any national legislation that in particular calls out dark sky parks. There's a report coming out. So a couple observations. So there is actually a report coming out this year from the IUCN about dark sky recognitions. There's IDA is probably the best known, but there's a Canadian Royal Astronomical Society. There are various other national level certifications. So that will be a complete repository of what's going on globally. On the question about the policy, one of the other projects we will be launching we'll be launching the beta version of the website. We hope in the next few months is actually a collaboration with the University of Arizona to build a policy and law database, which will be a repository of ultimately national plus subnational level law. So if you want to know, is there what countries have adopted laws that involve light pollution, you'll be able to go and find it, or what states or what communities have adopted laws and developed laws that include light pollution and tackle street lights, for instance. So that will be a resource for individual national level laws. France has one, as you're probably aware. Mexico has one. There's just a handful of countries that have national level laws.
Yeah, Croatia as well, I think. So I like this question from Alan Corey. There's a lot of information available to discuss light pollution, but what tips could you give to a person who has 60 seconds to suggest a lighting ordinance be placed during a public city council meeting?
I think that will, I'm going to dodge that one, because I think that will be, that is the reason our advocacy community exists, right? We have a community of advocates out there who have worked with their city councils to figure out how to pique people's interest. And I think that what you will find is every community is different. Some communities, it might be because it's great for tourism. Other communities, it might be because they're really concerned about the river running through town and they're concerned about the trout. Other communities, it might be because of astronomy. So we'll close at the end with examples of how you can get involved in the advocacy community. But really, that's why we bring people together, so you can lean on each other for support.
And speaking of the astronomy community, Philip asks, is there a concerted effort by IDA to reach out to astronomy clubs and organizations such as the Astronomy Society of the Pacific, Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, etc.?
Yes, we have good relationships, certainly with the American Astronomical Society and others. Betty Meyer, in fact, just gave a presentation at the Astronomy Society for the Pacific. And we are looking, one of the ideas we're exploring is any astronomy club, we'd love them to be able to appoint a dark sky, in a sense, ambassador to become part of our advocacy community to create those points of connection. In fact, one of our, Michelle, and call out Michelle again, Michelle Wooten's part of AES. She's on the light pollution committee. She's helping with our technical committee, and James Lowenthal is going to be helping develop who is the chair of the light pollution subcommittee of AES, is going to be helping develop the education program I developed. So there's lots of engagement. I think the challenge is there's also 193 countries around the world, 197. There are lots of national level clubs out there, and I think that's where all of you come in, is helping build and make those connections.
So Amy asks, how can I get a copy of the model ordinance for street lighting? I think that's something we can just probably share. I have a couple different lighting policies. I'll be sure.
Yeah, but let me speak to that as well. I mean, there was a model lighting ordinance that IDA developed about 12 years ago, the Illuminating Engineering Society. And I was not part of the organization at that time. Some others were, like Mario and others, I believe it. It was not without controversy at the time. I think the idea was that we could, all we had to do was develop a technically perfect ordinance, and people would pass it and we would solve light pollution. Well, the reality is the ordinance we developed was so complicated, most people couldn't understand it. And if they enacted it, they didn't know how to enforce it. So what we're moving towards is much, again, coming out of the education program. We want to work with all of you to really help you understand what's important to your community, so that you can work with them to identify what's an ordinance that does work, that moves them forward, that they can understand and that they can enforce, that is also credible and will reduce light pollution over time.
Thanks, Ruskin. Don Nilsson, hi Don. I thought IDA changed its guidance from 3000 Kelvin to 2700 Kelvin However, the overwhelming majority of lights with the fixture seal of approval program are 3000 Kelvin. Are there plans to update the FSA webpage?
Yeah, so our fixture seal approval, our dark sky approved lighting, those criteria continue to essentially be no light above the horizon. The fixture must be subject to being dimmed, certain other safety requirements, and an upper limit up to 3000 Kelvin. There's no current plans to drop the 3000 down to 2700. What we have also done is really kind of step back from this and adopt a set of policies and say what we're really looking at is the total quantity of light that you're putting into the environment. So what you always need to be thinking of, if you're thinking about spectrum, you also need to be thinking about how long is the light on and how many, at what level is it on. And by controlling all of those variables, you can do what we're all trying to do is actually reduce the overall amount of light that's going into the environment, the overall flux. What's really been happening over the last 10 or 12 years, and I think it really comes out of this science papers, we're putting more lights up and we're putting brighter lights up, and we're putting lower lights up, and it's the combination of all those three things that have led to this runaway light pollution. And it's the light that's going out it's the light coming out from our windows as well, right? It's the light coming out from digital billboards. It's not just the street lights. Certainly here in Tucson, once you've handled your street lights, you haven't solved light pollution. We know that they've done a good job of that, and light pollution continues to go up because of car dealerships that are lit up at 2 a.m. when they shouldn't be, and flashing billboards. It's all of those we also need to be concerned about.
Well, thanks, Ruskin. So we have 3 minutes left. Do you think we should move on to kind of our closing slides and calls to action?
Yeah, that would be great. I should bring it up, right?
Yeah, sorry to those of you whose questions we were not able to answer. If anyone would like to converse further, I'll pop my email in the chat. It's just bettymaya@darksky.org. Ruskin's is just ruskin@darksky.org. So we're all pretty easy to get a hold of. I think Allison is allison@darksky.org. So feel free to reach out to us.
And the last thing I'd say, it's like we're going to be holding, as we see, these monthly meetings, and so part of the goal is just to be more accessible, to engage in a dialogue, and really figure out how we can best support all of you, and thank all of you as we move forward together. So, as you said, there we are.
All right, thanks, Ruskin. Okay, so this is the plug for joining our advocate network. We have a great series of short introductory videos about the topic of light pollution that we usually ask people to watch before joining the advocate network, but I think Ruskin's all-encompassing presentation definitely counts as that. So I'm just going to send the link to the form where you can fill out your email address and kind of city, state where you live. And then you'll be added to our Dark Sky Advocate Network, where we host monthly meetings, kind of like this, but we've transitioned for them to be more action oriented. So these first couple of months, we're really working on getting International Dark Sky Week proclamations as a great way to start building that relationship with your city councilors, mayors, or even your state governors. You can get them at all levels. We're actually trying to work with the White House this year to get a proclamation at the White House. And if you'd like more information on how to get a proclamation in your area, come to our Advocate Action meeting on February 2nd. I also just popped in the chat an instructions link and our template proclamations if you just feel like going out and doing it on your own. You can go to the next one, Ruskin. And then, of course, just wanted to get this on everyone's radar that Dark Sky Week is coming up April 15th through the 22nd. You can get more information on our website at idsw.darksky.org. And we will be really leveraging all of your local events, and as well as hosting some IDA specific events that everyone can attend virtually. So we'll also be sending out an outreach package very soon to people who are in our advocate network to give you those social media and outreach tools to spread the word. And I think that is it. See you next month, February 15th, for a discussion on light justice. And I'll turn it back over to Ruskin for the final word.
Just thank you, Betty Meyer. Thank you, Alison, for putting this on. Thank you, everyone, for their patience. Those of you who tried to get in last time, thank you for persevering. And I always just take such inspiration from the questions and seeing everyone's faces from around the world. So thank you for enabling us to do all this together. It's great to be part of this incredible community. Thank you.